The story begins with the protagonist speaking while a box sits in front of him, accompanied by a robot's hand. He reveals that Kim Sol, the bastard, told him he had to box. From that moment, his grueling training commenced. As he writes, he questions why he didn't just quit, explaining that saying no wasn't an option, he simply opted for a slightly less unbearable situation. Later, Kim Sol explains the reason behind his boxing training. It wasn't for the protagonist's benefit, but because there was no one in the junior division for him to practice with, so he was made to do it. At this point, it's revealed that the protagonist was conversing with a worker robot, asking if it didn't seem absurd. The robot apologizes, admitting it can't comprehend the protagonist's words and asks him to repeat himself. Just as he is about to respond, the robot suddenly detects an unregistered product, which it must collect. The robot retrieves the product and leaves, leaving the protagonist in stunned silence. Kim Jong-yum sighs and calls for the robot PAX to perform its duties. Another robot approaches, stating that it is transporting packaging and politely asks Kim Jong-yum to step aside. He complies, and the robot continues on its way, thanking him as it passes by, while a drone flies overhead. The protagonist sighs again, lamenting the lack of warmth and wondering how a logistics center could be so empty. The storage room reveals numerous flying drones and robots at work. Kim Jong-yum thinks to himself that he must have ended up in the wrong place. This all happened about 2 months ago, right after he was discharged from the military. He looks up with a smile, enjoying the lovely weather. However, the joy of his discharge is short-lived when his phone rings. His mother informs him that they are suddenly moving to a bigger and better house, and as a congratulatory gift for his discharge, they have paid the deposit and 6 months' rent. Confused, he asks why they are only telling him this now. His parents have unexpectedly relocated their main house to Wajongbu, leaving him alone in a studio apartment near the school, which marks the beginning of his forced solitude. This leads him to start job hunting. With his parents covering 6 months' rent and his own savings from military service, he isn't in a hurry. However, the issue lies in the false hopes he harbors. Kim Jong-yum smiles at his cell phone, daydreaming about a potential romance that could blossom from a part-time job at a cafe he's eager to apply for. But reality proves to be far less kind than he anticipated. When he approaches the cafe to apply, the owner indicates a preference for hiring someone with experience. Forget romance, he can't even secure a job and is turned away at the door. The harshness of reality is more severe and cold than he expected. After a month of searching for work, he begins to go stir-crazy from extreme boredom. While staring at his phone, he feels frustrated that he can't even land a basic serving job, and his mouth feels dry. He texts his sisters, calling himself the most useless person in the world. One sister responds with laughter, questioning who advised him to get a studio apartment so early and calling him an idiot. His second sister chimes in, suggesting that their mom must have arranged the place for him anyway. The first sister adds that it's ridiculous that he can't find a part-time job. The second sister agrees and says goodbye as she heads off to work out, inviting him to join her at their gym if he has nothing else to do. Then, Kim Jong-yum hears his sister mention a company using AI that's hiring a lot of people his age for easy jobs. He asks for the name and decides to go to this company, the PAX Fulfillment Center. The scene shifts back to Kim Jong-yum at work, gazing up at the drones and sighing, noting the complete lack of warmth in the environment. He reflects again that he must have ended up in the wrong place, never imagining that his conversation partner would be a robot. Suddenly, someone calls his name, and he turns to see Manager Shin, who asks him to find something in the storage area. The storage is filled with boxes, making it a bit of a struggle for him to locate the item. He heads to the second floor and finally spots it. Climbing a ladder to retrieve the box, he thinks it should have been on the first floor, no wonder he couldn't find it. Noticing something on the door, he glances over, but suddenly the door slams shut and locks. Confused, he approaches the door and tries to open it, realizing he's locked in the storage. When he tries to call Manager Shin, he discovers the connection is unavailable and it goes straight to voicemail. Irritated that they won't pick up when he needs them, he briefly considers calling 119 for help. However, he dismisses the idea, reasoning that it's just a storage room, not a freezer or anything serious. He thinks about how reporting it unnecessarily might create awkwardness with Manager Shin, so he decides to wait and see. If the door doesn't open soon, he'll report it. Instead, he texts his sister to tell her he's stuck in the warehouse, prompting laughter from her. Suddenly, his second sister mentions hearing a building collapsing outside her home. Just then, his sister calls him, startling him. He answers with a "hey," but there's no response. Assuming it's just a prank, he's taken by surprise when he experiences the collapse firsthand. The alarms begin to sound, and red lights flash. Kim Jong-yum is shocked as an announcement instructs all employees to evacuate the area immediately and take shelter, repeating the message. In that moment, he realizes he's trapped in the warehouse and can't leave. He starts banging on the door, shouting that there are people inside. He grabs his phone to call 119 again, but the signal is lost once more. He thinks about how he would be in serious trouble if there were really a disaster happening. Suddenly, he hears a loud thud against the door, as if someone outside has punched it. Our protagonist began to tremble, and at that moment, a loud shriek echoed outside, making him realize that if he made any noise, he would be in danger. Kim Jong-yum started to sweat, convinced it was definitely something human. He dropped to his knees, pausing to think about what he should do. 3 days later, he opened a can of food and ate it while sitting on the floor. Since nobody had come looking for him, he figured something significant must have happened outside. Was there a war? He had no idea what was going on, but it was clear that being trapped here had saved his life. The blaring alarm that had once filled the space had fallen silent since yesterday, allowing him to sleep better now. He wondered how long he could last in this situation and if he could hold on, especially since his phone battery was running low. This would be his last note. He typed, "Please, let it be a soldier from our country who opens this warehouse. And may all the families be safe." With a sigh, he dropped his phone, thinking it was nice to have some peace without the alarm blaring, but he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. What on earth was happening out there? He hoped everyone was okay. Just then, a blue notification window appeared, stating that he had been chosen and urging him to check his awakened ability. Confused by the message, another system notification popped up, "My own subspace, level 1. Description: you can store an object in front of you in the subspace. Number of uses, 1. He stared at the new window and exclaimed, "Finally." His surprise turned to disbelief as he realized he had lost his grip on reality. He could no longer distinguish between fantasy and real life. He laughed it off, thinking that lasting 3 days in this situation was already impressive. He considered that he could put anything in his subspace. Then he decided to attempt to store the PAX fulfillment center. The system recognized this, and another message appeared, asking if he wanted to store it. He agreed, and suddenly felt as if he were falling. In the next moment, Kim Jong-yum found himself on the ground, his eyes wide open. As he got up, he realized the warehouse was gone, and with the smoke cleared, he understood that he was outside. He began to inspect the area further and saw an injured man. The scene was chaotic. As he looked closer, he realized the man was dead. Another system message appeared, indicating that the storing process had begun. Overwhelmed by the sight of the dead man, Kim Jong-yum suddenly felt dizzy and coughed, then vomited. A message then stated that an operating system suitable for his system had been found, with the update progress at 6%. He wiped his mouth, feeling a sudden headache. His expression shifted to one of shock as a large shadow loomed in front of him. A low growl emanated from the mouth of an orc, which stood behind him, its body covered in blood. Kim Jong-yum started to sweat and tried to calm himself. He thought that the loud roar sounded just like the one he had heard 3 days ago. Was it a gorilla or a bear? Whatever it was, it seemed to be passing through. Fortunately, it didn't appear agitated. If he didn't provoke it, he should be fine. However, in the next moment, Kim Jong-yum found himself shouting and running for his life, desperately searching for someone to save him. The orc let out a loud shout, its red eyes locking onto him. As it began to charge, Kim Jong-yum's fear intensified. He raced past the dead man, stepping in his blood. Glancing back, he confirmed it was indeed an orc and wondered why one was wandering around and why it was chasing him so quickly. He continued to run, realizing that if things kept up like this, the orc would catch him. Suddenly, a system message appeared, stating that synchronization had been completed and he could enter the subspace. The orc continued to chase him, shrieking loudly. Another system message asked if he would like to enter. As the orc closed in on him, he shouted that he absolutely wanted to enter. The orc raised its hand to attack, swinging its arm just as Kim Jong-yum looked back and realized it was too late. However, just as his face crossed into the subspace, he instinctively raised his arms to protect himself, closing his eyes. Slowly opening them, he saw the orc outside the subspace, seemingly trapped by a circular portal. The orc reached toward him, but it couldn't enter. He then heard a voice state that without permission from Kim Jong-yum, the master of this subspace, no living thing, object, or energy could enter or leave. Kim Jong-yum stared at the drone, still puzzled by the situation. Just then, a system message appeared, confirming that he had entered the subspace. He looked back in disbelief, exclaiming, "No way." When he turned around, he realized he was back in the warehouse he had stored earlier. Behind him, there was a blue portal. In the next scene, a drone buzzed around the warehouse. Kim Jong-yum watched in amazement as the drone became part of the system. He asked the system if he had really stored the entire PAX fulfillment center in the subspace. The robots continued their work, and the drones monitored the area. A system message appeared, indicating that he had successfully entered the subspace for the first time. Another message stated that he would receive a reward for completing the tutorial, 1 mana stone. The mana stone materialized in his hands, glowing with a blue light. It dropped in his hands, staring at it in awe. Suddenly, the orc punched the portal behind him, startling him. The orc's face was filled with anger as it growled. In his fear, Kim asked the system if the orc could get in, to which the system promptly confirmed that it could not. He glanced at another system message that appeared, stating that the PAX fulfillment center was level 1, a 5-story building with a total floor area of 10,000 pyong, approximately 33,000 square meters, containing every product needed to enhance customers' lives. Another message noted that the shipping speed was 60 km per hour, with a simultaneous shipment capacity of 1 and a shipping size limit of 2 meters. Amazed by the speed, Kim noted the message indicating 2 minutes until maintenance. He asked if that meant the logistics center only had 2 minutes left. The system confirmed he was correct, explaining that he could use the mana stone he had to supply energy and maintain the facilities in the subspace. Currently, he had 1 mana stone, which could power the entire facility for 24 hours. Kim questioned if just 1 stone was sufficient, and the system replied that when the PAX fulfillment center was stored in the subspace, the energy supply system was modified to suit the subspace environment. Thus, the facility now ran on mana stones. He wondered if this was even possible, reflecting that it seemed like the system had become a bit smarter. The drone shone brightly with blue light just as the electricity was cut off. PAX explained that the energy supply to the facility had been interrupted, and if it remained off, PAX Fresh and most other products could face serious issues. Curious, Kim asked what PAX Fresh was. The system explained that PAX Fresh was a delivery system from PAX FC that stored and delivered everything from fresh vegetables and meat to prepared meals, all kept in frozen and refrigerated conditions. Kim realized that the situation outside resembled a war zone, making food the most critical element for survival. Now, with the power to the freezers and refrigerators storing that food cut off, he faced a serious problem. He asked PAX if it was true that he could maintain the entire facility for 24 hours with 1 mana stone. PAX confirmed this was correct, prompting Kim to inquire about how he could obtain more mana stones. PAX replied that he could acquire them from beings of another world. Curious, Kim questioned what kind of beings those were. He looked back at the portal and understood that they included creatures like the orc that had chased him earlier. Holding the mana stone, he realized the orc was patiently waiting for him to emerge. Kim then instructed PAX to maintain the facility using the mana stone in his hand. The drone took the stone from him, and a system message appeared, indicating that the mana stone had been used. He then asked PAX if he could still search for items as before. PAX confirmed he could and asked what items he was looking for. Wandering around the warehouse, Kim discovered a box filled with weapons and tools, including knives, hammers, and more. He picked up a camping hand axe, thinking it might be useful. The system message showed the price of the axe as 28,901, while the folding steel knife was 13,001 and the kitchen knife was 11,151. As he considered his options, PAX stood in front of him. Kim remarked on how difficult it would be to get close enough to swing these items, concluding that throwing them was likely his only option. However, he was concerned about the limited stock of these weapons. He pondered whether the blades could even penetrate the orc's muscles. Holding the camping axe, he assessed the situation, knowing the orc would still be waiting for him. He thought that he didn't need to finish the fight in one go. Even if he couldn't kill it right away, if he could inflict a serious wound, he might be able to deal with it later. Deciding to focus on wounding the orc for now, he prepared to go for it. Kim charged at the orc, throwing the axe with all his strength. It struck the orc's shoulder, causing it to bleed, and the creature screamed in pain in front of the portal. Kim backed off a bit, cursing the orc's tough muscles, realizing that his attack had barely made an impact. He glanced at the box of weapons, trying to figure out what to do next. No matter how well he threw the weapon, it was too light to do significant damage. The only thing that might cause a dent was a heavy axe. There was one in the box, and he thought there might be 2 more in stock. He asked PAX how much stock was left of the heavy axe. The system replied that it would check the remaining stock of the camping hand axe. While Kim contemplated whether he should throw something heavier, like a bowling ball, he considered that if sharp objects wouldn't work, targeting the orc's joints with heavy objects might be a better strategy. After checking the stock, the system informed him that there were 15 camping hand axes remaining. Kim thought that since there weren't many left, he should save them for later. Suddenly, he had a realization and looked at Pax, asking how there were still 15 axes when he had taken one out. He wondered where the others were located. Wandering around the warehouse, he spotted one of the axes in the corner. He picked it up and asked why it was duplicating. The system explained that the items here were created by converting real objects into information, which allowed them to be duplicated. While they could be damaged or altered, they could not be depleted. Kim exclaimed, in other words, this is an infinite stock logistics center. The system confirmed his understanding. Gripping one of the axes, Kim realized he no longer had to worry about inflicting serious wounds, he could just throw them freely. He thought he might tire out before the orc was defeated, but the system reassured him that he didn't have to throw them manually. He could automatically ship products outside the subspace, although shipping was only possible once every 30 seconds. He could reduce the shipping time by enhancing the skill. Curious, Kim asked if shipping was a skill. The system confirmed this and explained how to use it. Just think of the registered product and say, ship, for it to be automatically dispatched. Looking at the axe, Kim said, ship. Suddenly, the orc was struck by the axe, and the impact sent its body crashing to the ground. Smoke materialized from the drone, and Kim noticed it, confused. He asked the system what the speed was, and it replied that the current default shipping speed was 60 kilometers per hour. Hearing this, Kim was taken aback. So that was what the shipping speed meant. The system confirmed positively and mentioned that he could adjust the speed. It stated that he could currently increase it to a maximum of 75 kilometers per hour, but to go beyond that, he would need to enhance the skill. Curious, Kim asked how he could enhance the skill. Pax explained that he could do so using mana stones. Looking at the orc, he saw it lying lifeless on the ground, the axe having pierced its brain with the force of the attack. Kim called out to Pax while glancing outside, stating that he needed to search for some items. He removed his clothes and shoes, then began his search. He found a pair of lightweight combat boots priced at 52,500 won, and tactical combat pants priced at 78,000 won. He put on a white t-shirt and a simple polo shirt over it. Next, he spread out a detailed map of the Seoul metropolitan area, which cost 31,500 won. He bit the cover of a pen to remove it, using one of the 12-color permanent markers priced at 6,500 won. He circled the Gwangjin, Gangnam, Yeong, and Dabong districts. Sitting on the floor, he studied the map, thinking that if he started with the nearest locations, it would follow this order. Since he would begin from Gunpo, he needed to hurry to reach them, hoping that everyone would be safe. Looking at the bicycle, he thought about how long it would take to walk, but he was relieved to have a decent means of transportation. While it wasn't as good as a car or motorcycle, right now, it felt as valuable as a supercar. He had a dual-ton Kodiak Sports electric bicycle, 16.5 black, priced at 1,890,000 won. The bicycle gleamed brightly, equipped with a flashlight. As he rode, he wished for everyone to just hold on a little longer. Kim began his journey into a world engulfed in chaos caused by monsters from another realm. The tires of the bicycle were new, and the markings on them were clearly visible. 30 minutes after leaving the subspace, Kim had already killed 12 orcs. During this time, he learned two important things. First, the orcs were running toward him, trying to grab him, and he realized he needed to use his abilities. Before an orc could catch him, he entered the subspace to evade the attack, leaving the bicycle outside. Upon landing inside the subspace, the orc collided with the barrier, letting out a loud shriek. Kim recognized that he had been too distracted to properly examine the situation. After using his skill while hunting orcs, he discovered that his ability was incredibly powerful. When the combat axe flew toward the orc at super speed, he realized it was an overpowered ability. Unfortunately, it only grazed the orc's shoulder, causing a wound. The orc, noticing the injury, became even angrier and attempted to break the barrier. Kim cursed himself for missing the target again. Of course, it was difficult to hit with a 30-second cooldown and a range limited to 10 meters, but he knew he could improve this by gathering mana stones and upgrading his skills. The cooldown time was displayed on the system screen. Besides, Pax's abilities weren't limited to just shipment. Suddenly, the orc heard a rustling behind him as the axe floated in midair and entered the subspace. Kim explained that there was also the product retrieval feature that automatically brought back dispatched items. As he retrieved the axe, he used the shipment ability to attack the orc, sending it flying with the force of the blow while he brushed the dirt off his clothes. He thought that the retrieval skill was just as convenient as the shipment ability. Normal items like axes didn't need to be retrieved, and he had no idea how it worked. Even mana stones could be retrieved. As the orc fell to the ground, a mana stone was released from its body. Kim thought it was unfortunate that the stones could only be retrieved after the enemy was dead. Once he obtained the mana stone, it flew toward him, and a system message appeared, indicating that he had acquired 1 mana stone, bringing his total to 13. Looking around, he realized that product retrieval was literally about bringing back dispatched items. Although he hadn't dispatched the mana stone, it seemed that any monster he killed would yield a mana stone for him. It felt like he was collecting money. He was glad he had put Pax into subspace. As long as it was maintained, there was no risk of dying inside. Now, his goal was to quickly get his family into the subspace. As Kim exited the subspace, a loud screech echoed from above. Looking up, he realized that the bizarre creatures beyond common sense weren't limited to just orcs. Above him soared a creature resembling a wyvern, illuminated by the light of the moon. The monster screeched loudly, clutching a deer in its grasp. Watching the creature, Kim wondered if it had indeed caught the deer. With its wings and larger build than an orc, he realized it would be tough to hunt. But was it just his imagination? The sound was too loud to be solely from one monster. The screeching continued. Suddenly, Kim heard a voice calling for help. He quickly turned to see a man, drenched in sweat and visibly exhausted, running slowly due to fatigue. He shouted the man's name, calling out to Mr. Choi. Just as Mr. Choi looked back, the wyvern nearly caught him, and he barely managed to dodge. However, the wyvern launched a second attack, whipping its tail and striking Mr. Choi's back. He slammed to the ground as the wyvern flew overhead. Another man appeared, concerned for Mr. Choi's well-being. He urged Mr. Choi to get up quickly, unaware that the wyvern had landed beside him while Mr. Choi remained on the ground. The wyvern opened its mouth wide, and the man froze in shock and fear, unable to move. The wyvern drooled as it gazed at the man but then shifted its attention back to Mr. Choi, causing the man to feel confused. Suddenly, he realized something. The wyvern's target had always been the smaller-statured Mr. Choi. With its eyes glowing red, the wyvern approached the weakened figure on the ground. The other man thought, did it think Mr. Choi was easier to hunt than him? That's why it kept ignoring him and focused only on Mr. Choi? Feeling paralyzed by fear, he held a knife but trembled uncontrollably. Just then, he noticed something from behind, the ringing of a bicycle bell, accompanied by a bright light from the bicycle's flashlight. This caught the attention of both the wyvern and Mr. Choi. As Mr. Choi began to ask what the sound was, an attack flew toward the wyvern, hitting its mark. Mr. Choi's eyes widened in surprise, and the other man was equally astonished as blood spurted from the wyvern. The force of the blow sent the wyvern crashing to the ground, where it lay motionless. An axe was lodged in its neck, and the man stood in shock, realizing someone had just killed a wyvern with an axe. Kim sighed, catching the man's attention, and said, "Thank goodness it died in one hit." Arriving at the scene, he asked if everyone was okay and apologized for the light. Blocking the beam with his hand, he inquired again if everyone was all right. Both the man and Mr. Choi were speechless, simply staring at Kim. They thought he looked like a soldier on a bicycle who had killed a wyvern by throwing an axe while riding, leaving them both amazed and shocked. They asked if Kim was a soldier, but he remained silent. Suddenly, both men bowed and thanked Kim for saving their lives. While still shielding them from the light, Kim expressed his relief that they were safe. However, he clarified that he was not a soldier, pointing to the logo on his shirt, which indicated he was wearing the uniform of PAX Fulfillment Center. Mr. Choi asked if he was a PAX FC employee, having initially mistaken him for a soldier due to his attire. The other man chimed in, saying that even if Kim wasn't a soldier, he certainly seemed to possess some unusual skills, given that he had caught a wyvern by throwing an axe while riding a bicycle. Kim noticed they understood abilities. The man explained that he had also awakened an ability, though it was just a humble, driver ability. Given the circumstances, he hadn't had a proper chance to use it. Suddenly, Mr. Choi lightened the mood with a laugh, expressing his envy since he hadn't awakened any ability himself. Kim replied, "Anyway, to think we got help around this area is truly fortunate." He then asked if there were any more people nearby. Mr. Choi confirmed, saying that this was Block C, which had a lot of logistics centers, so many people had gathered here. If only people had gathered without the monsters, he continued, but they came too. Most of them are dead, attacked, killed, or eaten alive. Maybe around 10 or 15 survivors are relatively isolated in Block E, at the underground terminal. They came from there as well, looking for a road vehicles could use, and ended up gathering some daily necessities. But then the building disappeared out of nowhere. Kim pondered the mention of isolated vehicles. Cutting off the conversation, Mr. Choi suggested that instead of talking here, if Kim had no place to stay, he was welcome to join them. He added that it was on the 4th basement floor, where monsters had never attacked. At the very least, you can sleep comfortably, and we can offer you some light snacks. Kim thought for a moment about whether or not to go. Mr. Choi had definitely mentioned vehicles earlier. Did that mean there was a functioning vehicle? He considered that while he didn't need food or a place to sleep, he did need information, especially about any functioning vehicles. However, he didn't completely trust them. In that case, he couldn't refuse. Kim thanked Mr. Choi, saying he really appreciated it. Mr. Choi laughed and replied that since Kim had saved their lives, helping him in return was the least they could do. "Let's go, I'll lead the way," Mr. Choi said. Kim responded, "Yes, please do." The manna stone emerged from the body of the wyvern, glowing brightly as it flew behind Kim and entered the subspace. He thought about the risks they were all taking, just like him. Most importantly, they still had no idea about his ability. If things took a turn for the worse, he could always escape into the subspace. It wasn't dangerous enough to warrant serious worry. At Mr. Choi's camp, an orc lay slain with a spear embedded in its neck. The man who had killed the orc was a stern-looking old man. The camp was filled with people, and at the center stood the old man, gripping the spear that had taken the orc's life. Kim stared at the man, feeling a wave of terror wash over him as he realized he had never seen a face like that before. There was something about him that exuded danger. Sweat trickled down Kim's face. The camera angle shifted to reveal the scenery at the camp. Mr. Choi approached the old man and asked if everyone was all right. The old man replied that they were fine, explaining that an orc must have wandered in by accident. Fortunately, it hadn't seen them, so they were able to take it down easily. No one was injured, but he noted that this place could no longer be considered safe. Kim stood there, speechless, staring at the dead orc. He recalled what Mr. Choi had said about this place not being attacked by monsters, yet here was an orc. The old man noticed Kim and asked who he was. Mr. Choi explained that Kim was the one who had saved them from the wyvern, mentioning that he used to work for PAX FC and was incredibly strong. He had thrown an axe and killed the wyvern, but the axe had shattered along with the creature's head. The onlookers were confused and began asking what kind of ability Kim possessed. Someone stepped forward, seemingly wanting to approach him. Suddenly, a woman grabbed Kim's hands with both of hers, expressing her happiness that he had saved both Yong-soo and Mr. Choi. While she shook his hand, Mr. Choi thanked him again for his heroism, and the old lady commented that she didn't know how to thank him enough. Kim responded that he was just doing what he had to do, and the old lady remarked on his kindness. She then asked if he had a girlfriend, prompting a man to interrupt, saying the old lady was talking nonsense again, which made everyone laugh. The old man chuckled and explained that Kim must be surprised by the comment, adding that they had worked together for over 10 years, so Yong-soo and Byung-kyeol felt like family to them. The old man introduced himself, saying it was nice to meet Kim. He identified himself as Lee Jin-mak, the center manager of Daehyun Express Terminal. Lee Jin-mak bowed and thanked Kim for saving his friends. Kim replied that he was pleased to meet him and introduced himself as Kim Jong-yum. Lee Jin-mak then stated that while he couldn't say this place was entirely safe, it was more comfortable here than outside. They had food and water supplies from the logistics center, so Kim could eat and rest comfortably while they took turns standing guard. Lee Jin-mak also encouraged Kim to eat as much as he wanted without feeling embarrassed, as they had plenty of supplies, and if they ran out, they could always get more from the logistics center. Just then, Yong-soo interrupted, saying he had something he wanted to tell Mr. Manager. Yong-soo informed the manager that the logistics center had vanished without a trace. Hearing this, Lee Jin-mak was taken aback, and the others looked equally surprised. Mr. Manager asked what Yong-soo meant by the logistics center disappearing. Mr. Choi explained that it was truly gone, which was why they had been chased by the wyvern. One of the other men questioned how such a large building could simply disappear. Another man replied, "I don't know." The manager added, "Well, with the monsters roaming around, what seems impossible these days?" Kim remained silent, knowing that the logistics center was in his subspace. The other men asked the manager what they should do next. He replied that no matter what, they had to dig through the tunnel, staying there would only make things worse. He urged them not to be discouraged, stating that their time had just come a bit early, and they needed to dig the tunnel as quickly as possible. The old lady chimed in, saying that even without the logistics center, it was time to go, urging everyone to push through. All the men agreed. Kim then approached the manager and asked about the plan to force their way through. The manager explained that, as he had heard from Yong-soo and Byung-kyeol, they all had homes elsewhere, so vehicles were essential. Kim inquired if they had any working vehicles. The manager confirmed that they did, stating that vehicles were everywhere. However, he added, the problem is that all the roads are blocked. The golf course blocks the way to the north, containers obstruct the east, and the southern Yangdong Expressway is completely destroyed. The tunnel to the west is the only exit, but unfortunately, a group of wyverns has taken over that tunnel. Until now, we've been surviving by getting food and water from the logistics center, but now we have to force our way through. Kim thought to himself that they had vehicles, and they just needed to dig through the tunnel. Mr. Manager then said that Kim didn't need to go through the tunnel, the blocked roads were for vehicles, and there were ways to escape this place on a bicycle. But Kim replied that he needed a vehicle as well, insisting that he thought he should go through the tunnel. He considered that if it was just wyverns blocking the tunnel, that was good, it might take some time, but he could catch them with his ability. The manager laughed, saying that if Kim was going with them, he wanted to stop him but also wanted him to join. Kim smiled and said that if he could help, he would like to do so. But Kim thought that he didn't need to reveal his ability, even if he wanted to help. While they seemed kind, he couldn't overlook one important fact: they weren't like him, who had been lucky enough to find a safe place. They had struggled to survive during the time he was trapped. Although they may have stockpiled food and supplies at the logistics center, they wouldn't disclose the exact amounts. They understood how crucial food and water were, and that was information they couldn't easily share. That was fine, he needed that level of caution too. Kim spoke to the manager again, expressing his desire to assess the situation in the tunnel and gauge the size of the wyverns, so he would go scouting. He thought that this way, he could use his ability alone to clear the path. He recalled the enhanced items he had checked when they killed the orc. Opening his system window, he saw that with 5 magic stones, he could reduce the cooldowns to just 5 seconds. Then he noticed an option for openable items. The system message indicated that there was a precise delivery feature that automatically guarantees delivery to a specified location if a target is designated, costing 10 magic stones. Simultaneous delivery could deliver up to 2 items at once, also costing 10 stones. Automatic delivery automatically delivered designated items, with the time interval set arbitrarily, costing 10 stones as well. Kim didn't fully understand what automatic delivery was, but the other features sounded incredible. For such powerful abilities, needing 10 magic stones seemed steep. He wondered how many he had left. He felt grateful that he had saved the magic stones without using them for upgrades. If he was going to face a group of wyverns, there was something he should enhance first. After saying he would go scouting alone, he planned to use their caution to secretly catch the wyvern, take the magic stones, and enhance his abilities to clear the way. A smile spread across Kim's face as he thought about these ideas. In the next scene, Kim was in the back seat while Yongsu was driving. Yongsu remarked that it was too dangerous to go alone. Kim replied that he had just been chased by a wyvern. Yongsu insisted that it was the same situation, and he couldn't let Kim go alone now that he knew the way. He believed that Kim would save them again, just like he did before. Hearing this, Kim thanked Yongsu for trusting him. He added that this was his first time using his ability as a driver. Kim then asked Yongsu if he could see the message window and everything else. Yongsu mentioned that he hadn't seen the message window since he first awakened his abilities, but he felt confident about driving because that was part of his awakened skill. Still, Kim's worried expression was evident. He suggested that Yongsu should try driving, but if it didn't work out, they would need to walk. The moonlight illuminated the wrecked buildings at night. They could hear a bicycle moving through the area when suddenly Kim was taken by surprise. Yongsu stood up and placed his feet on the bicycle handle, attempting to balance himself. Kim asked why he was driving like that. Yongsu explained that there were so many cars on the road it was hard to see. Kim thought Yongsu must be crazy, but surprisingly, they didn't crash. Yongsu then spotted a wyvern ahead and asked Kim what they should do. However, Kim couldn't see the wyvern and asked where it was. Yongsu wondered if they should keep going, but Kim insisted they should wait since he couldn't see the creature. In the distance, the wyvern was hiding behind a red car, and Kim finally caught sight of it. The wyvern raised its head, its bright red eyes locked onto them. Yongsu asked Kim again what they should do, asking if he should keep moving. Kim didn't respond. Instead, suddenly, the wyvern was struck by something, its head snapping back. The creature fell, bloodied and unconscious, as they passed it on the bicycle. Yongsu continued to drive in his unusual manner while Kim glanced back at the monster. Kim told Yongsu not to look behind, and he agreed, focusing on the path ahead while Kim retrieved the mana stone and placed it in his subspace. In the next scene, Yongsu pointed out that he could see the tunnel up ahead. Kim was surprised, they had arrived sooner than he expected. Yongsu kept driving in his strange way, and while Kim remained silent, Yongsu suddenly stopped. Kim asked why he had halted, looking back at the wyvern's head. In the next moment, Yongsu's face turned pale with fear as he stared straight ahead, sweating profusely. Suddenly, a group of wyverns surrounded them, leaving no escape route. Yongsu exclaimed that they were in trouble. One wyvern began to advance toward them, shrieking menacingly. Yongsu was frozen in place, thinking it was all over. He realized that even with electric bikes, there was no way they could handle so many wyverns. He felt there was no chance they could outrun them or defeat them with Kim's abilities. Yongsu trembled, completely shocked and terrified. He simply said that it was over. Turning to Kim, he noticed that Kim had opened his system window, declaring that he couldn't hide this anymore. He called for packs, and a system message popped up, stating it would cost 10 magic stones. He commanded to use the remaining 5 to reduce the cooldown. While Yongsu asked what packs was and what Kim was doing, Kim ignored him and continued pressing the system window. The wyvern shrieked, preparing to attack. The wyverns flew toward them, seemingly targeting Yongsu on the bicycle. As the wyvern opened its mouth, blood dripping, it looked ready to devour Yongsu. Just as he was about to be eaten, Kim shouted, "Ship," and suddenly the skill activated. All the wyverns were struck by an axe summoned from packs. Yongsu instinctively raised his arm to protect himself and closed his eyes. Kim reassured him, saying it was okay now. Yongsu opened his eyes and looked behind Kim, gasping in surprise. Yongsu's eyes widened seeing what was behind Kim. He saw a portal behind Kim, revealing the logistics center inside with numerous drones flying around. Kim consumed 1 mana stone, reducing the cooldown time by 5 seconds. The system message indicated that the current cooldown was now 20 seconds. Another message appeared, showing that he had consumed another mana stone, further lowering the cooldown to 15 seconds. Kim continued to use more mana stones until the cooldown reached just 5 seconds. Pax informed him that to reduce it further, he would need to level up the subspace. The scene shifted back to Kim and Yongsu, with the wyvern lying lifeless on the ground. A mana stone emerged from the wyvern's body and entered the subspace as Kim retrieved it. He turned to Yongsu and said that from now on, Yongsu needed to stay right beside him. That was the only way he could protect him. Yongsu immediately agreed, though he wondered what Pax was and what the logistics center behind Kim was all about. Suddenly, Kim warned, "It's coming." Yongsu looked up just in time to see the wyvern open its mouth wide, attempting to eat him. However, it shrieked loudly as an axe flew toward it, striking the creature with enough force to send its head backward. The wyvern crashed to the ground, but 2 more wyverns were watching from a distance. One of the wyverns shrieked loudly, seemingly commanding another to attack. The second wyvern lunged toward them. Yongsu, scared and sweating, braced himself, and just before the wyvern could bite him, the subspace portal activated as a protective barrier. The beast's teeth clashed against the barrier, sending Yongsu backward while both the wyvern and Yongsu fell to the ground. Another wyvern let out a piercing shriek and flew in to attack. Kim threw another axe at it, but the axe missed its target. In the next moment, as the wyvern opened its mouth, Yongsu shouted, fearing Kim would be eaten. However, Kim entered the subspace to shield himself, and the wyvern's head collided with the portal's barrier. Confused, the wyvern stared at Kim inside the portal. In the next scene, another axe flew from Kim, striking the wyvern's head and sending its entire body flying. Yongsu watched Kim with amazement as the portal's light shone brightly in his face. Kim walked out, leaving the portal behind. Yongsu thought to himself that this was an unbelievable ability. From the logistics center to Pax firing axes, he didn't fully understand what was happening, but one thing was clear, for Kim Jong-yeom, these monsters were not a problem. If it was Kim, he could easily break through the tunnel. The reason they insisted on using a delivery vehicle was to carry food and move relatively safely. The tunnel was just part of the route, even if they passed through it, the monsters would still be out there. But for Kim, it was different, he really just needed the vehicle as a means of transportation. Yongsu felt a pang of jealousy. With an ability like that, he could quickly get to his family too. But he wondered how far Kim needed to go that he required a vehicle. As Kim looked at the remaining wyvern, he suddenly noticed the creature turning and running away. Yongsu remarked that Kim seemed dangerous, and the wyvern sensed it. Kim responded that it was a smarter reptile than it appeared. He thought about wanting to enhance his skill to precision delivery, but he was a bit short on mana stones. A mana stone flew near Yongsu, catching his attention. As the axe entered the subspace, followed by the mana stone, Yongsu asked what the blue stone was. Kim inquired if this was Yongsu's first time seeing a mana stone. Yongsu looked confused, and Kim explained that he used it to enhance his abilities. Yongsu was surprised to learn that abilities could be enhanced. He said he would have to try it if he got the chance, and Kim agreed. Kim then thought that was why they hadn't extracted the mana stone from the orc's corpse, perhaps not all abilities worked the same way. Yongsu interrupted his thoughts, expressing that he hadn't expected this kind of ability, with Pax firing axes like a gun. With that kind of power, he could probably break through the tunnel on his own. Kim's expression turned amusing as his secret was revealed, but he stayed silent. Yongsu, surprised, asked if Kim could really do it alone. Kim explained that he hadn't come there with that intention, he just planned to check things out, and if it seemed doable, he would secretly break through. He hadn't meant to show off his ability like this, leaving Yongsu speechless. Yongsu bowed slightly, apologizing for getting in Kim's way. Kim replied that he didn't know the way anyway, so if he had come alone, he wouldn't have been able to get through. He pointed the way and said they should head back for now. The wyvern had retreated, but it might attack again soon. As Kim started walking, Yongsu remained speechless, watching him. Suddenly, he asked how far Kim was going if he needed a vehicle. Kim responded that he was heading to where his family was. The closest place was Gangnam, but ultimately, his destination was Wajongbu. Yongsu was surprised to hear Gangnam mentioned. He said he was heading to Indokwon, which was on the way to Gangnam. He then asked if it wasn't too much trouble, could Kim go with him to Indokwon? Kim looked confused and replied, "Huh?" Yongsu explained that even if he passed through the tunnel, he wasn't sure he could get home safely. As Kim knew, Yongsu's ability was being a driver. He was confident in driving, but he couldn't fend off monsters. However, Kim could fight them off. So if we're headed in the same direction, he can be helpful with the driving. It's tough to reach Gangnam, but he can get Yongsu to Indokwon faster than anyone. Yongsu added that he might not be much help, but he promised he wouldn't be a burden, and if needed, he could also provide food. Kim thought it wasn't a bad idea. Yongsu's driving skills were beyond doubt. More importantly, if this gave him an excuse to keep his ability hidden from others, it was worth considering. If his ability became known, Kim had no idea what they might do. It might be overthinking, but in the worst case, he might have to prepare for something he didn't want. The scene flashed to a worst-case scenario where everyone in the camp was pointing weapons at him, surrounding him. Kim thought that the best way to avoid wasting his time was to keep this hidden. Above all, he trusted Yongsu. He said that despite being chased by a wyvern just a while ago, he trusted Yongsu and risked his life to come this far. Kim then agreed to Yongsu's proposal. Yongsu smiled brightly and thanked Kim. However, Kim stated that he would handle the tunnel himself. Other people would only get in the way, and given the situation, he didn't want his ability to be revealed. He asked Yongsu to ensure he could manage the tunnel on his own and to talk to the others for him. Yongsu agreed, saying he didn't need to worry. Everyone will cooperate if you ask them to. In the next scene, Yongsu and Kim returned to the camp, and Yongsu announced, "Everyone, attention. We can all make it through the tunnel." Yongsu explained that Kim would break through the tunnel on his own using his awakened ability, so they just needed to wait outside until it was done and then move forward. He further explained that while he knew they were curious about Kim's ability, they shouldn't be. What's certain is that Mr. Kim Jong-yeom will break through the tunnel. Kim was surprised, thinking how could Yongsu reveal a secret after asking him to keep it hidden. The others then asked if Kim would really break through the tunnel on his own and if they just had to wait until it was done. They wanted to know how Kim was going to do it. Kim thought to himself that he was screwed. The others felt that Kim was someone they should be cautious of, but his words only made them trust him less. One man called for their director-manager. The manager thought to himself that the die was already cast, so they had no choice but to move forward boldly. Kim explained to everyone that by tomorrow morning, he would have the tunnel cleared for everyone to leave. He realized it wasn't entirely convincing, but they had no choice. Their primary concern was food, so he needed to clear the tunnel quickly to ease their worries about supplies. The manager called out to Kim by name, stating that he wouldn't ask about his abilities or be curious about them. He acknowledged that Kim must have made this decision with their well-being in mind, and if not interfering would help him, then they wouldn't interfere. In the next scene, a man holding a box of food placed it in front of Kim. The manager explained that while Kim was scouting the tunnel, they had gathered some of their reserve food supplies to give to him. He had risked his life to scout the tunnel for them, and all they could do was share some food. Now, he was also going to clear the tunnel for them, so they thanked him profusely. Kim remained humble. Everyone in the camp bowed and expressed their gratitude, apologizing for being able to offer only that. Kim, still humble, said he did it because he needed to, but this was too much. He mentioned that the food must have been saved for their families, so he was okay and asked them to take it back. However, Yongsu placed a hand on Kim's shoulder and urged him to accept their offer. Yongsu explained that it must have been difficult for everyone to share their food, and if Kim rejected it, that would seem too harsh. Besides, they weren't the only ones with families, Kim had one too. Suddenly, Kim remembered his family, worrying about them. He stared into space as the others talked. One man asked the manager if it was the right time to bring out the alcohol since Kim would be clearing the tunnel tomorrow. The manager responded that if not now, then when? In the next scene, they cheered with bottles of beer, declaring it was time for a drink. The manager, holding a whiskey bottle, remarked that it was a shame there was so little of it, but maybe that was for the best. Let's drink just enough and head out to see our families tomorrow. The people in the camp toasted, enjoying the night before they set out for their families, also cheering for Kim Jong-il. The next day, the sun shone brightly, and clouds floated in the sky. Kim held his axe, ready for combat. As he rode his bicycle, he reassured everyone that they didn't have to worry since he was the one entering the tunnel first. Yongsu and Mr. Choi looked worried, while the manager appeared determined, and others were scared. Kim stepped on his bicycle and began to pedal, heading alone towards the tunnel as everyone watched him leave. He was resolute about clearing the tunnel and promised that he would be back. In the reflection of the car windshield, marked by a bullet hole, Kim could be seen riding his bicycle. The weather was pleasant, with the sun shining brightly that morning. As Kim arrived at the entrance of the tunnel, he spotted a horde of wyverns destroying cars, searching for any humans while others crawled along the ceiling. Kim remained calm, simply staring at the monsters before him. The scene shifted to a flashback of Kim as a child. Their father asked if he had fought with his sister again, noticing Kim's black eye. Kim insisted that his sister had hit him first, pointing a finger at her and explaining how she always picked on him. His sister retorted, asking when she had ever done that. Their father observed that after all their fighting, they were at it again, smiling as he watched them argue. In the background, Kim's sister pulled his hair while he attempted to punch her. Their father continued to smile, saying that, to be honest, they looked pretty close to each other. He mentioned that as an only child, he had always envied the bond between siblings and expressed how envious he was of both of them at that moment. As the two continued to fight, their father said, "Even though you might hate your sister or brother now, there will come a day when you realize just how precious and grateful family truly is." Suddenly, he was interrupted when a ladle struck his head. It was his wife, angrily asking, "Didn't I tell you to come help me prepare dinner?" She wondered what was taking so long, while their father just smiled, scratching his head. The two kids stopped fighting and stared at their parents' sweetness. Kim smiled, feeling grateful for having a family. The narrative then shifted to the camp from the night before they were set to enter the tunnel. Kim was sitting nearby, watching the manager cry in drunkenness, lamenting how much he missed his son. One man commented that the manager was at it again and called for help to take the alcohol away from him. An old lady laughed at the scene, while another man retrieved the whiskey from the manager's grasp, even as the manager continued to sob. That night, the full moon shone brightly, illuminating the night sky. The people slept soundly, aided by the alcohol. Yongsu woke up, feeling the need to go to the bathroom. He noticed that Kim was missing and wondered where he had gone. Yongsu stepped outside and asked the guard on duty where Kim had gone. The guard replied that Kim had gone out for some fresh air a little while ago. The lady wondered if he was feeling uncomfortable. Yongsu decided to look for Kim himself. He peeked behind a truck and saw Kim holding a box, prompting him to call out. Yongsu asked why Kim wasn't sleeping, to which Kim replied that he couldn't. Curious, Yongsu inquired about what Kim was doing. Kim placed his hands on his hips and said it was nothing much. When Yongsu looked inside the truck, his eyes widened in shock. He saw boxes of food inside the truck along with Kim's bicycle. Yongsu was astounded by the sheer amount. Kim explained that he had only loaded about half to avoid making the vehicle too heavy, but this was more than enough. He mentioned that this was the last truck. Yongsu was taken aback, realizing that meant Kim had filled boxes of food in all 15 trucks. Kim urged him to keep it a secret from everyone. Still in disbelief, Yongsu remarked that even with a logistics center, it was still too much. Kim reassured him that it was fine, he had quite a lot in stock. Yongsu remained surprised, pondering how Kim could distribute so generously despite having ample supplies. He asked, "Mr. Kim, just what are you?" The scene shifted back to the present, where Kim swung his axe, sending a wyvern's head crashing backward. More wyverns approached him, but he was safely inside the portal. One wyvern attempted to eat him, but the barrier repelled it. With his arms folded, Kim noted that the wyverns couldn't reach him, they couldn't enter the portal. He wished he could put these people into subspace and pass through. He asked Pax if others could be placed into subspace, but Pax replied that at the current subspace level, it wasn't possible. If Kim achieved subspace level 2, he could accommodate up to 20 people. Looking at the system message, Kim learned that to level up the subspace, he needed 100 mana stones, but he only had 32. Kim thought about the remaining wyverns in the tunnel, estimating there were about 40. A few were even running away, 1 or 2 at a time, making leveling up unlikely. It was thanks to upgrading, precision delivery, that he managed to catch this many. Without the upgrade, he would have caught even fewer. If he wanted to eventually put his family into the subspace, he needed to level up. Suddenly, something caught Kim's attention. In the distance, he spotted a different wyvern. Its eyes shone brightly with light, and as he looked closer, it just stared back at him. Kim's expression turned worried. In the next scene, all the people waited patiently outside the tunnel, behind them the trucks loaded with boxes that Kim had filled. An old lady expressed her concern, asking if Kim was really okay on his own. One man suggested that if they tried to help and ended up making things worse, they should just hold on and wait a little longer. Suddenly, a fat man shouted that he could see Kim and that he was coming back. As they looked closely, they saw Kim riding his bicycle, emerging from the tunnel. His clothes were covered in bloodstains, even his pants were soaked with it. The lady grew worried at the sight. However, her concerns faded when Kim smiled, assuring them he was okay. Everyone celebrated his return, sharing smiles and relief. The director made an announcement, stating, "Everyone has worked hard under a foolish director like me. I hope you all reach home safely without any injuries." One man thanked the director, wishing him a safe journey as well. The director smiled in response. Kim then informed everyone that if they ran into any trouble on their way, they could try opening the cargo hold, as he had prepared a little gift that should be helpful. The director looked confused, while Yongsoo just smiled. The director then commanded everyone to head back to their families as they climbed into the trucks. The road was filled with cars, but it wasn't blocked, allowing the trucks to pass freely. They safely reached the other side of the tunnel, where people waved goodbye to one another before going their separate ways. The sun shone brightly, and the weather was pleasant. Kim reflected on the wyvern he had seen. It had fled so quickly that he hadn't gotten a good look. Still, he was certain it was a wyvern, albeit a larger one. He wondered if it was a leader or an adult. Suddenly, while Yongsoo was driving, Kim heard a noise and asked about it. They were about to pass through a city and saw a dead wyvern in the road, along with a soldier who had lost both legs. Yongsoo's face showed sadness at the grim scene. Kim noticed this and realized they had no choice. With corpses of the dead, monster bodies, and overturned vehicles everywhere, there was no clear path. It would be even harder for Yongsoo. The sight of soldiers' bodies lying in the streets meant the situation was worse than they had thought. They spotted a wyvern devouring a man in the center of the road. Kim thought that if his discharge from the military had been delayed by 3 months, he might have been one of those fallen soldiers. Yongsoo interrupted his thoughts, noting that the road was blocked. They saw fences and cars obstructing their way. Yongsoo pointed out that the barbed wire seemed to have been set up by the military to block something, suggesting they take another route, perhaps to find another bridge to cross. Kim asked Yongsoo to wait a moment as he noticed something at the end of the bridge. They saw a monster resembling a dog, with muscular build and sharp fangs dripping saliva. Kim realized now what the military was trying to block and wondered how many wild monsters were in there. He thought that if they could catch them all, his subspace could level up. Yongsoo said he would turn the car around, insisting there must be another route they could take. As they observed their surroundings, the truck was positioned in front of the barbed wire fence, with a narrow path visible on both sides of the blocked road. Kim gestured for Yongsoo to stop for a moment. He asked if it would be possible for their vehicle to pass along the sidewalk over by the road. Yongsoo confirmed that while it was narrow, they should be able to get through. Kim smiled, saying he had just thought of a good way to get through without needing to turn back. With a wide grin, he said, "Let's go that way." As Yongsoo assessed the situation, he spotted an orc surrounded by wild hounds. The orc was holding one of the dogs while the others barked at him. Suddenly, the hound lunged at the orc, and the struggle ensued. The hounds began to swarm him, and soon the orc vanished from sight as the dogs attacked him with their sharp fangs. Both Yongsoo and Kim witnessed this gruesome scene. Yongsoo felt a surge of fear and said that the idea Kim had mentioned earlier now seemed like a bad one. He hesitated and asked again if Kim was really planning to cross the bridge. Kim confirmed, saying it was easier than he had thought. He then asked Yongsoo if he had ever heard of a game where 3 races waged war against each other, specifically a space war strategy game called Stark. Yongsoo replied that it was impossible for someone from his generation not to know it. Kim explained that in that game, players could customize maps and settings to enjoy. Among those, his favorite was a map where players had to fend off swarms of hounds using limited units and the terrain. He noted that the current situation was quite similar to that map. Hearing this made Yongsoo even more nervous. Kim then asked if Yongsoo could reverse the vehicle back to a certain spot. Yongsoo didn't respond and instead drove the truck, breaking through the barrier and maneuvering it beside the narrow road. The hounds, still feasting on the orc, noticed their arrival. Kim opened his system message, wondering when he would put this feature to use, and realized it was perfect for situations like this. A system message appeared, indicating he had unlocked the auto ship by spending 10 magic stones. He currently had 27 magic stones. Kim ordered Pax to spend everything and enhance the skill. The system message showed that 5 magic stones were consumed to increase the shipping speed to 100 kilometers per hour. Kim felt pleasure at this development and taunted the hounds, saying if they weren't satisfied with eating the orc, they could come for him instead. As the hounds started running toward him, Kim declared that it was playtime. A system message appeared, displaying a double-door refrigerator, 830L in size, with a price tag of 2,890,000 won. In the next scene, a refrigerator was seen flying at about 100 kilometers per hour, crashing into the wild hounds. More objects began to fly toward the hounds at incredible speed. Moments later, Kim acquired 12 magic stones, and a system message announced it. Seated at the back of the truck with his arms folded, Kim smiled as he retrieved the stones into subspace. He thought about how the reinforced shipping range and precision delivery had improved while digging the tunnel. He could have thrown the axe since he had also enhanced the speed of precision delivery, but after using it, he realized that precision delivery didn't track the target all the way, it only slightly adjusted its direction based on movement. Those hounds weren't just fast, they were incredibly quick. Even if an axe was flying at 100 kilometers per hour, the ones running from afar could dodge it. Moreover, they didn't stop charging even if one of their own was taken down right next to them. Given the situation, the best shipping interval was currently 2.5 seconds, meaning their charging speed was much faster than what he could manage with an axe. But what if it was a refrigerator? The refrigerator struck 3 hounds simultaneously, sending them flying as blood spurted around the area. Not only was the refrigerator large, but its sheer weight was enough to take them down with just a graze. Plus, with the automatic shipping he had just enhanced, this couldn't be more convenient. As the subspace continued retrieving the mana stones, Kim, still at the back of the truck, yawned. He ordered Pax to keep holding on, and Pax agreed. The hounds continued barking loudly on the other side while Pax kept launching refrigerators at them. Yongsu, sitting in the driver's seat, was shocked to see a flying hound in the side mirror due to the force. He couldn't believe Kim was launching refrigerators. He thought Kim could only throw axes. Besides, he kept firing the same refrigerator products. Even if it was a logistics center, did it make sense to have so many in stock? Could it be that the stock being retrieved was coming out as new products? Axes were indeed retrieved and reused, but what was going on with the refrigerators? While Yongsu was still staring at the mirror, Kim opened the truck door and called out, asking if Yongsu would like something to eat. Yongsu didn't reply, still shocked by what was happening behind the truck. He asked if the stock inside Kim's subspace was infinite. Hearing this, Kim was confused, thinking Yongsu already knew. Yongsu explained that he thought Kim was collecting the axes to reload them, but it seemed he was actually retrieving them and firing them again. Kim clarified that that wasn't the case. If he didn't retrieve them, they would just stay on the road and could damage his feet, so he collected them back. Yongsu then asked if it was true that it was infinite. Kim confirmed this, further surprising Yongsu. Yongsu then started the vehicle, and they began to leave while the hounds continued to fly behind the truck, struck by the refrigerators. Kim retrieved food from the subspace, and Yongsu mentioned he wanted a Coke Zero and a donut. As he drove, Yongsu expressed his embarrassment. Despite not knowing Kim's abilities, he still wanted to share food with him. Kim asked if he had gone out to patrol the tunnel, to which Yongsu replied yes. Kim opened his food and began eating a donut. Kim thanked Yongsu for trusting him and said he was grateful, adding that if Yongsu needed anything, he should just ask. Yongsu responded with a thank you but said he was good. Kim noted that thanks to him cleaning up the monsters, he thought Yongsu would be able to get home soon. If he crossed this bridge, his house was just an hour away. Hearing this, Kim smiled, relieved that Yongsu would soon see his family. Yongsu hoped nothing would happen to them and that they would stay safe. While eating the donuts, Kim mentioned that Yongsu couldn't show up to his family covered in bloodstains. He added that it would take some time to sort things out, at least long enough for them to get some new clothes. Kim asked if Yongsu had a preferred style. Yongsu laughed, saying it was surprising that Kim was even helping with clothing, and he thanked him. He smiled and remarked that he wasn't sure if Kim had what he was looking for, though. In the next scene, Yongsu wore a cool jacket and shades. Kim stated that most of the issues were resolved, with only 1 or 2 left. Yongsu insisted they should leave right away. Using his driving skills along with his ability, he engaged the clutch and pressed the accelerator, causing the truck to speed up. Kim held on tight as Yongsu continued driving, hitting hounds along the way. He turned the truck into a drift, positioning it perfectly toward the bridge, then accelerated while shifting gears rapidly. While Kim watched nervously, Yongsu reassured him to hold on tight, saying it would only take 20 minutes. Yongsu drifted the truck again, and Kim gripped tightly, gritting his teeth. The truck soon reached the city, and Yongsu maintained his speed. However, Kim began to feel nauseous and told Yongsu to slow down, as he felt like throwing up. When Yongsu called out to Kim, it was clear that Kim was dizzy and not in good condition. Yongsu announced that they had arrived. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content. Feel free to leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts or suggestions. If you want to stay updated on our latest uploads, click the notification bell icon. And hey, why not check out some of our other videos popping up on the screen right now? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really means a lot. Peace.